So, with the reveal that we are returning to Mondstadt for 5.6 for an official interlude quest, and the fact that most of Albedo's development has been done through events, I thought I'd make a summary of everything players need to know about Albedo going into 5.6, as well as some mini theories I have on what we're going to be seeing in the Archon quest. So, with all that being said, let's get into it. So, Albedo is a homunculus crafted by Reindotir, or Gold, to discover the secrets of the world. Albedo traveled with Reindotir for some time, developing his skills in alchemy through her tutelage, before eventually she dropped him off in Mondstadt, where he stays with Alice and Klee. Given Alice is usually gone, it means Albedo has taken over watching after Klee to some extent, and seems to consider her a little sister of sorts. The choice of Mondstadt, of course, was not random. Durin, another one of Reindotir's creations, fell onto Dragonspine, corrupting it with his blood. It's no surprise then that we find out that Durin's heart is technically still beating on Dragonspine, and Albedo is studying it. Durin was the dragon that attacked Mondstadt during the Cataclysm 500 years ago, though it's important to note that Durin did not seem to be aware that he was actually harming anyone. Venti and Dvalin defeated Durin, but Durin seemed to be locked away in an illusion or a hallucination, and thought that they were all just playing together. Indeed, Durin looked at Dvalin with wonder for his colors and his feathers before he crashed into Dragonspine. We also find out later that anytime Reindotir had failed experiments, which, as previously mentioned, those were homunculuses, and therefore somewhat sentient, she would feed them to Durin. One of these experiments we will talk about later escaped Durin's stomach during the crash landing on Dragonspine. Albedo also joined the Knights of Favonius and is the Alchemist of Mondstadt, a position which didn't exist prior to his arrival. It's mentioned that Mondstadt just didn't heavily invest in the research of alchemy until Albedo managed to convince them to do so. Albedo in the first event also asked the Traveler to stop him no matter the cost if he were to ever lose control. It's up for debate whether Albedo thinks he himself will be a danger to Mondstadt, or if it's the experiments he's running on Dragonspine, but either way, he was concerned enough to be like, hey, yo, bro, could you, help me, not go crazy? And if I do go crazy, could you, do something about that? And we were like, well, we do everything else without pay here in Mondstadt, so why not? And in the second event, heavily featuring Albedo, we find out more about this failed experiment that escaped from Durin's stomach. This is another homunculus, one that is chosen to look like a perfect version of Albedo, as it's his desire to take over Albedo's life. Albedo reveals to us that the diamond on his throat, that everyone assumed was a birthmark, is actually what marks him as a homunculus, and that while he could get rid of it using alchemy, he chooses to keep it, just as the other homunculus chooses to get rid of the mark, wishing to be a perfect version of Albedo. There are a couple of different fandom names for this being, susbedo and rubedo being very common. I'm choosing to go with rubedo just because I like the name better. Rubedo has a lot of spite towards the world and Reindotir, and Albedo specifically. Reindotir because she literally fed him to a dragon, which, honestly fair, I would be super pissed about that too, and towards Albedo for living a life that he feels like he should have had. Rubedo stole Albedo's alchemy notes and has shown himself to also be incredibly adept at using alchemy. At the end of the event, even though we do kill one of Rubedo's duplicates, Whopperbedo for anyone keeping track, the fate of Rubedo is left ambiguous. It's implied that he's either hiding out on Dragonspine, or that he might have disguised himself as an NPC that shows up at the end of the event. This NPC is an adventurer who's been missing for a little over a year, and at that point he then reunites with his son at the end of the event. A lot of people suspect that this could have been Rubedo taking on his form to sneak past everyone and live in Mondstadt. Though another theory could be that Rubedo just actually was keeping this NPC alive for a year because that NPC had amnesia and then once he was well enough he sent him back down the mountain. But that would be awful nice for a guy that we've kind of seen as a little bit more on the crazy side. Either way, we, as the Traveler, by the end of the event are the only ones who know of Albedo's true heritage, besides Alice, obviously, and that there could still be a twin of his out there in Mondstadt. So now that we've had a brief overview of Albedo's background and the necessary story leading up to 5.6, let's dive into some theories about what we might actually see in this Archon quest. We know that Albedo is on trial for murder, and that hilichurls are attacking Mondstadt, and many of the knights seem to be injured in this assault. Even Venti has taken his bow out, standing atop his statue in an apparent readiness to defend Mondstadt. The title of this Archon quest is Paralogism, the definition of which is a piece of illogical or fallacious reasoning, especially one which appears superficially logical, or which the reasoner believes to be logical. Whose murder Albedo is on trial for is currently unknown. Some speculate that this could have to do with Rubedo, or maybe Rubedo is framing Albedo for murder, or maybe it's not Albedo on trial at all, it's Rubedo instead. The fact remains that the title of this Archon quest clearly indicates that at least one piece of information we are presented with is at best illogical and at worst completely incorrect. This is brought into even more focus when we see the chess game between Alice and Mona's master, with Albedo on the board. It would seem Mona's master is implying that to find the truth, Albedo must upend the status quo of the world, while Alice opposes this idea, something which isn't very surprising considering she has left her daughter in Mondstadt. What is interesting about the trailer, though, is that Albedo doesn't seem to be the one truly playing chess. Instead, he's on the board, as if he's merely a piece to be moved around. This again isn't surprising considering who his mother is, and the fact that he was likely placed in Mondstadt to bring about this outcome in the first place. After all, Reindatir is one of Conraya's 5 sinners, and it was her creations that wrought havoc in many nations during the Cataclysm. But the question remains, what is Albedo's goal? Albedo has been researching Durin's remains for some time. Arguably, that has been his main area of research since arriving in Mondstadt. It isn't surprising to any of us that he could be working towards Durin's resurrection. In fact, Durin's resurrection has been something the fandom speculated about for years. It's also been hinted at that Mondstadt is set to face a betrayal of some kind. Some have speculated that this betrayal will come from Kaya because his family has connections to the Abyss Order, and others have speculated that the betrayer will be Albedo. However, I do have a different theory in mind. Albedo has shown time and time again that even if he is separate from humanity, he doesn't wish to cause undue harm to anyone in Mondstadt, and he's been shown to be attached, especially to Klee. However, Albedo has also shown himself to be a ruthless researcher, and his chase for the truth and the fulfillment of his ultimate goal, which is to create life, is a major driving motivation for him. Even still, why would Albedo ask us specifically to stop him if he ever lost control? If the result of his research was all he cared about, then he certainly wouldn't tell us to stop him. Interestingly enough, Albedo, I would argue, has a lot of parallels to another scientist we know in Teyvat, and that would be Doltide. Doltide, or Zandik, was cast out of the academia for his unethical experiments, and time again, Zandik has proven that he cares very little for human life or suffering as long as it's in the pursuit of his own goals. Experimenting on children, turning people into weapons, crafting delusions, all in a day's work for this psychopath. It would be easy for Albedo to follow this path. He's incredibly intelligent, and he's even stated that he feels separate from humanity. And yet, time and time again, we see him indulging in life in Mondstadt. He uses his artistic ability to illustrate for Xiangqiu's books. He takes care of Klee, and he assists others as they attempt to learn alchemy. It seems like a sharp departure from his character to suddenly have him on trial for murder. And yet, the evidence can't be overlooked. The Hilichurls which attack Mondstadt have a strange black and red aura, not unlike the corruption that seeps from Dragonspine. The Hilichurls themselves all seem to be coming from Dragonspine. So all the evidence really does seem to be pointing towards Albedo, and most damning of all, Albedo isn't defending himself. So why is it? I think Albedo is trying to protect Mondstadt, yes, but I do also think he's trying to resurrect Durin, and perhaps even save Rubedo. Now, these might be outlandish claims, but hear me out. I don't think the Hilichurls in and of themselves would be enough of a reason for Venti to take up arms in defending Mondstadt. However, Durin's resurrection certainly would be enough of a reason to do so. Rubedo is still on the loose as well, and I suspect Rubedo is actually framing Albedo for murder. Now, whether Rubedo actually murdered someone or not is up for debate. I personally don't subscribe to that theory, but who knows, we'll see when it comes out. All of this is because I believe Rubedo has decided that if he can't live in Mondstadt or have Albedo's life, then he might as well destroy it. I believe it's also going to likely be Rubedo who resurrects Durin, at least at first. it wouldn't surprise me if when Durin is resurrected, he's still corrupted. But I believe that Albedo is actually working on a way to fend off that corruption and maybe even heal Durin. This is also harkening back to the previous summer event where Wanderer actually managed to save a fake Durin who lives with him now in Sumeru. I believe this was ultimately some amount of foreshadowing for this portion of the story. I believe over the course of his research, Albedo came to the conclusion that he must right the sins of his mother, and that starts with Durin and Rubedo. Now, whether Rubedo can be saved is another question entirely, because I really highly doubt that he did actually murder someone. I'm personally of the opinion that he's framing Albedo for murder with a fake body, and if that's the case, I could see Mondstadt more or less taking Rubedo in, though of course under the careful watch of the Knights of Favonius. But if he did actually kill someone, then I think that even Mondstadt would struggle to be like, hey my guy, come live with all of us. Also, as I mentioned in my Nod Krai update video, which if you haven't seen is linked below, the chess game played between Alice and Mona's master probably has some foreshadowing for Nod Krai and the Hexenzirkel's involvement there, which was only really further cemented for me when it became obvious that we would be in contact with Varka in this patch through one of Alice's Dodoko devices. I believe the Hexenzirkel is divided on how to proceed in Nod Krai, that there is a rift between those who wish to upend the current order of the world and those who are concerned about what the fallout of that choice might be. Moreover, the chess game is awful reminiscent of the chess game played between Piero and what many have assumed to be the Cryo Archon, though I have my doubts about that, in the Harbinger trailer. Essentially, I believe we're actually going to get important lore information and foreshadowing in this Mondstadt Archon quest about Nod Krai and the story therein, so it'll be important to pay as close attention to this Archon quest as we possibly can. And there you have it, my thoughts and a quick summary of everything you need to know leading into this interlude quest. I'm honestly super excited for this patch to drop, and I will be streaming it on Thursday, May 8th, so I hope to see you guys there for my initial reactions. If you like this video, then like and subscribe, and most importantly, comment so I don't feel like I'm screaming into the void. And, as always, may the wind bless your travels.